Gonna take you to a place that I know you have never been before. I won't break you, never let you down, and always keep you wanting more.
Welcome to Play to Win, where we bring you 360 degrees of esports coaching. This show will bring you professional esports players, team executives, league owners, celebrities, anybody and everybody that are contributing to the explosive growth of that billion-dollar industry called esports. My name is Charles Gentry, aka The Oracle, and you have tuned in to Play to Win. And we're back, as usual, Mr. DJ Yams with the vibes. We have a fantastic guest today, a man who is highly acclaimed in the world of journalism. He's seen it all, done it all, and he's here with us today to tell us all about it. I'm talking about Mr. Lewis Johnson. How you doing, Lewis?
Charles, I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic, fantastic. Just like everyone else, trying to stay out the way of all that's going on out here.
It's unbelievable. I mean, who could have ever predicted that we'd be in the times we're in now? I mean, there's so many things that are like converging on each other, and I don't know what to make of it. There are times when we just sit around and you shake your head. Other times you just put your head down and you keep working, you know? So
Right.
I think
Exactly.
it's all those things that are happening to all of us right now.
We're definitely in uncharted territory right now.
Yeah.
So, I know of all the people, Lewis, in the world who have had to change their schedule, I know that it has seriously affected you with what you do. Tell us kind of what you're up to right now and how is it coming along?
Yeah, so let me pull up my American Airlines airline flight miles. It's a blank sheet. Ain't nothing on it, Charles.
Doing those frequent flyer miles and they have disappeared. You might not make your quota this.
Yeah. They better change everything to make sure we can keep our status, whatever that is. Listen,
Right.
I have experienced so much in terms of travel and track and field. I guess initially the sport of track and field gave me that opportunity when I moved into the professional ranks, and then television's been an extension of that. So getting on a plane, most weeks out of the year, maybe 35, 40 weeks out of the year is normal. So I miss it. I really miss, the meetings, getting ready, the preparation here at home in my office, and then getting on the plane and heading to wherever we're going. My office in the sky is gone, and then we get off the plane and we do our due diligence. They pull up a truck, they expand it, they pull everything out. We execute a broadcast, they close it up, we rush back to the airport, and we come home. That's normal. So I miss it so much. Big time.
Right, yeah. And after being in that routine, for so long. Uh, for all of our viewers and who are watching, this man has done so many things in the industry. And I want to kind of just touch bases first, some questions to bring you up to speed on who Lewis Johnson is. And then we'll get into some things about esports that he is doing, getting into now, and we'll bring it all the way back around. But first of all, let's just talk about some of the things on the resume. Covering the Olympics, Lewis. How many Olympics is it now that you have been there for?
Yeah, I've been there for 10. And this month should have been 11 in Tokyo, but obviously that one was delayed because of COVID-19. And we're all praying that, it can't be delayed again. If they can't host the games next summer this time, they'll be canceled, which would be a tragedy. But Sydney was my first, 2000, and that was just a dream come true to be able to go to Australia, get on the plane to fly 14 hours that way on these chartered Qantas 747s, and to be down under and see the Opera House and see the Sydney Harbor Bridge with the rings on it, and then experience those games. The Kathy Freeman moment when she won the 400 meters. that up until the last games, every time I step on that stage, it's like a dream come true. And I wish for all the people who love sports and all those who love big stories and big moments and they love that stuff. I wish I could share the spot because I'm trackside, Charles, and I'm right there. I'm right there from where it's all happening. The incredible moments that are just so awesome to the devastating moments, and then those athletes come up on that platform. They're in the mix zone with the athletes and the media mix, and they trust me to ask them questions. And sometimes it's awesome, and sometimes it's terrible. But those are the moments that I love in 10 Olympics and can't get enough.
Okay, okay. Give us give us about two of those Olympic moments that you really remember as being special.
Yeah, so the first one, I mean, after all these games, the first one, my number one moment is still Kathy Freeman,
Okay.
who was
Winning it at home.
Australian but Aboriginal,
Right.
right in Sydney. In 1996, she had won the silver medal in the 400 meters, and for the next 4 years, her country suggested and hoped and said that she would win the gold in Sydney. So she had that backpack of pressure for 4 years. But she came out there in the final, 110,000 people in Stadium Australia, and that stadium, the nation, and indeed the continent came to a complete standstill. Just imagine that. An entire continent comes to a complete standstill when she got in the blocks. I was up in the booth with Carol Lewis as an analyst, green as I could be. Couldn't believe what I was seeing, man. And she ran that race and turned the corner, came up and won that thing. And the place went crazy. And I'll never forget. And it's a great, I think, teaching moment for young journalists. Sometimes in TV, we need to know when to be quiet. And our play-by-play man then was Tom Hammond, who was a mentor of mine. And when she crossed the finish line and she finished that great moment, the director was cutting shots to Kathy Freeman, to the prime minister, to the crowd, back to her. And Tom Hammond did this. He put his hands up and he said to me and Carol, was basically, don't say anything.
Right. The
There's
picture is
nothing
saying
you
it
can
all.
say. There's
Right.
nothing you can say that can top the moment. So that was a great lesson there. So that's still my number one moment because her victory meant so much, not just for her, but for the Aboriginal people of Australia. She had a moment there that was just incredible. And then after that, I mean, Usain Bolt, what can you say? The Jamaican sprinter has been incredible. 3 Olympics right there to see him win back to back to back, the 100, the 200, the 4x1. Just unbelievable. And people often ask me, Charles, what kind of guy is he? I said, he's an incredible guy. You can't do what he's doing without being full of confidence. But he is a great human being, a great young man, and every moment, all those games, he carried himself with class and dignity. He walked in a building. I never seen anybody walk into a facility and change the whole facility just because it was him. And then he had the ability to live up to the moment. So Kathy Freeman, Usain Bolt, can't beat him.
Okay. All right. All right. And this is coming from a man who knows a little bit about track. Uh,
A little
my,
bit.
hey, well,
Compared to
my
those two,
viewers
come
might
on
not
now.
know. Now, wait a minute. When you make it to the NCAA championships, you're doing all right. Okay? Yeah, you're doing all right. And I tell you something else. Mr. Lewis Johnson ran the 800 meters. That was his race. And Lewis, they don't call that race the man eater for nothing.
That's right. That's right.
tell us about what the 800 is all about.
Yeah, so I kind of got there by default. In high school, I was a quarter miler, 400 meters, one lap around the track, and did a little high jump, just stuff like that. No scholarship, and went to the University of Cincinnati, and I walked around there for 2 years, just lost. I didn't know what I was doing, trying to figure out what I was going to do. But one of my best friends from the high school team was on the college team, kept encouraging me, and finally in 1985, I walked on the team. I got chewed up in the quarter real quick. And my college coach, Bill Schneer, said, you got to move up. And I said, move up to what? He said, you got to move up to the 800. I was like, okay. So I embraced the training, embraced the race. And by the second year, I was one of the co-captains there at UC. And then by the third year, we set the goal to become an All-American. And that meant getting to the NCAA final, finishing in the top 8. Now, truth be told, there's the plaque right there. Truth be told, I got to that final in 1987. And I finished 9th. But there was a guy in the race from Holland, Robin van Helden, and he didn't count because he wasn't an American in the race. So I was an All-American because I was ninth, but I was the eighth American to finish. And that's how I earned that plaque. And I'm super proud of that because I went from walk-on to All-American in 3 years. And then that next summer it was off to track and field in Europe. And it was just an unbelievable run. But yeah, the man eater's that's the right phrase for it. It'll eat you up. You're
Yes,
not
it
ready.
will. Yes, it will. Don't get in that race unless you're serious about track.
Got to be ready. That's it. That's it.
You know, you went from a time where the 800 was considered a distance race, and now it's considered a sprint. I mean, people are running it that fast now with their
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, I would call it a long sprint. You have to have this really unique mix of speed. So, for instance, if I was a 47 quarter miler, right? And then if you have the ability to have some strength, if you're willing to embrace the overtraining, all those, 6 times 800s in track or 20 times 200, these things that would give you that strength, you had a nice base, you could do well. Now, if you could run 44 seconds or 45 seconds in the quarter, and you also had that distance strength, now you're dangerous on the global stage. So that was the one thing I lacked, was that maybe 2.5 seconds of quarter mile speed. But I think I made the most of what I had. But yeah, that race now is a controlled sprint. That's what we call 800 now, a controlled sprint.
Right, right. Well, you have, again, done so many things in your career as a journalist. Um, Tell us about some of the things that you have covered. What's the magic of them? Let's, for instance, talk about March Madness, NCAA tournament and championship. What makes that so special?
The moment, the moments make it special. I don't have anything close to me here in my office, but if you saw the amount of information we would get for every March Madness tournament, the research department always did an unbelievable job preparing you for everything. And I would say all that research is probably more important for the play-by-play person and the analyst, because they do most of the talking in preparation and setup and setting the storylines and all that kind of stuff. And I've got to read through some of it, be prepared. But after all the talk, after all the shows, the studio shows, the radio shows, and everything we do, when we get out on that floor, that's what I love. And I'm going to tell you something, Charles. I've had notes and prep and everything, and all of a sudden you're standing there with 15 seconds to go, and one team's got the ball and they're down one. Every bit of note and information you have has just gone out the window, because the interview is going to be about the shot that either fell or didn't fall that advanced the team to the next round. And that's what it's all about, capturing the emotion, taking the microphone and with the least amount of words, trying to get those people to talk to you and explain what the moment's like. That's what I love. Nothing tops that.
Right. And, you know, we think about some of those magic moments. The moment that made Michael Jordan when he hit the shot for North Carolina, you know, just a young guy.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about a team that had James Worthy, Sam Perkins, you know, all these big names that are in the NBA. And here's this kid at that time who hits the biggest shot. You know, yeah. So it's a definitely a icon maker.
Yeah, and it is also a program maker, because I've seen so many programs like the Wichita States and other small programs that nobody really knew about, but they had the right coach and they had the right players and they got in the right bracket, and all of a sudden they're knocking people off and they knock off a bigger seed and they become a bigger story. And then once again in another game they live up to the moment, and somebody like a Fred VanVleet or somebody like that is hitting shots and making a name for himself. I'm getting the goosebumps thinking about this, man. We need to have March Madness again. I'm telling you. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like it.
Right. The Steph Curry team.
Yeah.
You know, just again, a small school, you know, comes out of nowhere and knocks off the Giants, you know.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Amazing, amazing. Not only have you covered the Olympics, but you also have covered the Paralympics. You know, talk to us about that experience.
Well, again, that's on an entirely different level. I wish that every child that wanted to complain about something had a chance to travel to the Paralympics and just sit in the stands and watch what happens. And what I mean by that is this. I worked my first one in Sochi at the Winter Olympics. So we went all the way to Sochi, did the games. There I was working bobsled, luge, and skeleton, came back to the States for 10 days, and then flew back to Russia again. And I think I was 2 or 3 days into working those games. I was at Alpine, so I was up at the skiing events. And I had no idea what to expect, but I'm witnessing athletes come down. There's one athlete named Natalie Jalen who has, I believe, either she has only one leg and one arm, both on the same side, coming down the slope skiing, and then as she crossed the finish line, punching her, her snow skis and her guide up in the air. I remember witnessing athletes coming down the ski slopes, and it's dead quiet. And I asked my producer, "Why is everybody so quiet?" They said, "Look at your sheep. These are the blind skiers." So everybody's quiet so that the skier can listen to the guide who's in front. And once they cross the finish line, then it would just erupt. You just cannot understand the power and the emotion and the example of courage and toughness and everything that I witnessed. And within 3 days, I called back and I said, "Guys, as long as I'm working the Olympics, I want to work the Paralympics because this is unbelievable." So it was day after day. And even there were times where, man, I was just choked up because I couldn't believe what I was not only seeing, but what I was hearing in the interviews about what it meant to the athletes. And I just thought it was incredibly inspiring. So the Paralympics are they're just off the chain.
Amazing, amazing. Let's switch reels and talk about, you also cover the NBA, and one of the things that I always look at in terms of the NBA is how the NBA has really captured, the viewership and kind of encapsulated, the culture of the hip hop culture.
Yeah. Yeah, they really have. And I mean, as we continue to move through this cultural situation in our country is with respect to race. I mean, one of the big elephants in the room is you look at the NBA, which is 75% of the league is Black. And so that is an opportunity of strength that they have as a league. And I've been so impressed with how the commissioner has been forward and tried to be ahead of things on that. Some of the players like LeBron and others have an incredible amount of power on their platform, and I see them trying to use it. And before all that happened, you look at the league and you look at how it connects with. You mentioned music. Let's talk fashion. I can remember being in the hallways during the regular season, the playoffs, and then cameras dedicated from the NBA to cover what athletes were wearing when they came in the back doors off the buses. I mean, that was just an amazing thing, So young entrepreneurs who may be in the design game or what have you have a chance to maybe have a breakout moment by having an athlete have their gear on. And then obviously the in-game presentation with the way they handle everything, the entertainment, the music, and how it appeals to everybody. But it's an amazing experience to cover a game, to cover a season, to cover the playoffs. But yeah, they've got a strong connection to so much, and music is absolutely a big part of that.
Right, definitely. You're talking about going from being the athlete to covering the athletes. Kind of give us an indication of how you made that transition from actually, being in sports and participating in sports to becoming a journalist and capturing sports from the other side.
Yeah. Charles, I know you know this, having been a journalist for so long in your career, in your life, that there's a line between being a journalist and being a friend, or having someone and having your journalistic credibility always remain intact. And so it was a challenging transition at first to go from running to then covering people, because when you're in this world, you may have to criticize somebody. Now, I will say, and probably like you, I have zero desire to rip people to shreds over a mistake or over something that doesn't go right. I don't live like that, and I don't work like that. There are some people who make a great living in this business destroying folks. I will never be in that category. Don't want a penny from it. But what you do is you try and build relationships and connections, and with those relationships, you use it in a positive way to be able to shed light on somebody's story. So if something happens, great or not so great, they feel comfortable talking to you about that. So I learned over time, you may be somewhere out of town, early in my career, and you want to sit down at the dinner table with people, and all of a sudden, it feels a little chilly. You're like, okay, I got to remember now, they see me as somebody in the media and not as that guy who was traveling on a circuit with them around Europe anymore, So the conversations may not want to have them in front of me. I had to learn to deal with that. And I think when you show people that respect, they give you the same respect back. They watch what you say and how you handle yourself on the air, what you write as you do. And now, of course, they watch what you post on social media or what you don't post. So I think there are a lot of young journalists who have to decide how they want to be in the business. I have no shame in telling people that I believe in off the record conversations. I believe in that type of confidence, so that you have a relationship that works back and forth. There are plenty of people who want to break news. That's not me. I'm more interested in the long-term relationship, and to me, that's what makes the job more fulfilling than just trying to, be a stoplight traffic cop, barking about this and that. That's
Right,
I have no interest
right.
in that.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, a lot of it comes down to trust.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Hmm. Well,
You work hard. You work hard to earn that trust, and you work hard to keep it.
exactly, exactly. And you can lose it quickly.
Real quick. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
Right,
true.
right. You you have been one person who has hit the trifecta, Lewis, and that is you have done work for CBS, NBC, and ABC. Okay? Yeah. So, you know, that alone is an accomplishment.
Thank you. I have to tell you that was you. You never know how things are going to work out in your life and your career. And I would have never guessed that I would have really started at network television. I had a few smaller things that I did, but I would never thought I'd started network television. And I would not have started at ABC Sports. That was my very first opportunity. I was working, I was running, and I had a little piece of tape from the Goodwill games in Russia, and that little piece of tape led to something. And suddenly I found myself in the office of a man by the name of Jack O'Hara. He was an executive at ABC Sports. And he had seen some tape of me doing some interviews at track and field, and he asked me the $1 million question at that moment. He said to me, "What do you know about college football?" I had like 5 seconds to come up with something. I said, "Well, sir, what I don't know, I can learn." He said, "Okay, great." So he gave me an opportunity to do 4 games, and I did those games, and that led to an opportunity to work for them full time. I was working doing college football, and then also working at a local ABC affiliate in Austin to get more reps on the air. That led me to doing some college basketball games. Next thing you know, I was going out the door to work with Brent Musburger and Dick Vitale. Couldn't believe that. And one moment after the next. Sadly, if you remember TWA 800, that tragic flight that crashed, Jack O'Hara and his wife and his daughter were on that flight. And I was at a Cowboys training camp when I got the call about them perishing, and it was just devastating because the man gave me my first opportunity in network TV. So I'll always remember him. And then, of course, NBC was the next one, working the World Outdoor Championships in Spain. I got an opportunity to audition there thanks to Sam Flood, who's an executive at NBC. Re-auditioned again for the same spot for the Sydney Games, and there was my first games there, and then been going from there. So it's been something. And it's CBS with March Madness, and it's been a great run. But I feel like I'm far from finished. A lot more energy and a lot more excitement to do more things.
Right, definitely so. Definitely. You are now getting into esports and doing some things there. So, talk to us firstly about your company, Johnson Media Group, because you're doing some interesting things with that.
Yeah, it is really a company that I've had for a long time. Haven't done much with it because I was so busy with family life and doing the other work in television. I'd say the most important things I was doing there was media training. As I got to know my mandate as an Olympic commentator, which was to be a storyteller, and got to know these athletes to tell their stories at the games, I was shocked at how many did not know how to tell their own stories in those big moments down the mix zone, explaining what it meant to them or what have you. And I was like, why doesn't somebody help these kids? And then finally it came around to why don't I help them? And so I developed a media training program that has evolved over time. And I work with individual Olympic athletes as well as groups. I've done some things with my first NASCAR team earlier this year, and the NFL Combine athletes at Michael Johnson Performance, as well as down at IMG in Florida, helping those guys get ready to go in what I call win the room when they're going to meet with these teams. So I've enjoyed that, and that's been the biggest, the busiest part I've kept with my company there, and now expanding more into my own show, which I hope to start here pretty soon here, podcast, and then other consulting work that I'm now working on. I'm really interested, Charles, in the opportunity I think we have right now, really responsibility to try and help some of these college teams get a better handle of their own cohesion and understanding culturally in the locker room. We may be sitting across from my teammate, but do you really know him? Does he really know you? I think that's been one of the biggest things that's come out of what we're experiencing across our country. Do we really know each other? And I believe that if we can give these kids and the program tools to be able to take a moment safely and really begin to see and know each other, that their connection and then their messaging through social media can inspire a campus to begin to do the same. And that could be powerful as it spreads. So I'm working on a program like that. Had a great conversation with somebody out of Australia who has a pretty neat cultural program. So we're working on those things, and then of course helping out our good friend Jacob Miles at Map Esports Network.
Okay. Speaking of Map Esports, All In with Esports, your show, how's that coming along?
Great. Having great conversations like we had with you, coming on talking about Blue Panther Media and what you have going on with esports there in Houston. Looking forward to working with you more throughout the next few years. But it's really great to be able to bring in, and I always, use my same training or love for storytelling to get to let people know who these folks are, and then we kind of get into the esports world, which we're all discovering. I mean, it's just amazing. Our kids have played games since they grew up. They're not out of the house, but I had no idea that esports would have turned into what it's blowing up to be right now globally. It's amazing. So All In with Esports is great. Got a great co-host in Kyle Airy, who is really more of an esports player and knows what's happening more than me, but he's tremendous and also part of the sales team. So we have fun with it, enjoy talking to people, and we've got more shows we're taping here soon, and hope the content gives people a sense of folks just a little bit deeper than just playing the games, who they are, and we'll have that covered as well.
Right. Excellent. Talk to me about this. Getting into esports, and you know that it can really be a factor in not just changing cultures, but in providing opportunities for a lot of people, and especially a lot of young people, maybe in the inner city.
Yeah, and that's really for me the biggest hook to be involved with Map Esports Network and with Jacob and his vision for the company. And I know you'll be doing the same thing with your group down in Houston. It's first of all, as I said before, track and field, excuse me, gave me the opportunity to see the country and then see the world as an athlete. And I absorbed all that, love to meet people and love the different cultures. Television's been an extension of that. And when I look at esports, I'm like, it is pretty cool that you could actually play against somebody, not just down the street or around the corner or around the state, but somebody on the other side of the world. And now we can capture that, and you can actually have a conversation potentially beyond the games itself. How can you culturally connect in the world of esports? That's exciting. But then the greatest, I think, opportunity we have is to then expose some of our inner city kids and other folks in neighborhoods to not just playing the game, but understanding how the games are created, the science, the technology behind it, the engineering behind it, right? The creativity behind it. And how do you get involved with that? Did you even know about these things? So that to me is a great opportunity for us to really do something and pay it forward in these next generations. They get connected with not just playing the game and putting down the all the stuff, but actually learn how to do those things and be inspired to maybe go get some training or education, even a degree in the program, and then move into the industry with some authority. And I think that's awesome.
Okay. All right. Well, down to our last two questions. One is this: you are all over the globe. You're all over every sport. Okay. Sometimes I think there's two or three of you out there. Right?
Me too.
So, what do you do for enjoyment, or how do you relax in your downtime? What is Lewis Johnson like doing?
Well, first and foremost, family is first, man. I was so lucky on the circuit to met my wife in a little small stadium in the suburbs of Paris some years ago, and we had two sons that were both born there. So traveling is one of our biggest loves. We would be, without COVID-19 and all this stuff being shut down, we are usually over in Paris 3 or 4 times a year. We just celebrated the 14th of July, which is their National Independence Day. We always be there with family, having a good time. And so that for me is what we love to do. I enjoy working out, training, trying to keep myself healthy. I'm 50 and some change. So trying to keep the body together and keep the mind and spirit together is important as we age, and try to do that. But family for me is it, man. I love that. Love music, love family, love culture, and traveling for me is I got to say is one of those big ones. We are both, my wife and I are both missing traveling big time. Love to get on the plane and go places. Always loved hotels, all that type of stuff. We embrace all that. So I had to learn, Charles, how to settle down. And it's funny, experiencing European culture. I learned some things there about slowing down, about having a meal, enjoying a nice glass of wine, taking a walk, um, museums, things of that nature, things that I didn't grow up, with. I didn't learn about those things. So I always tell any group of young people I talk to, college or whatever, one of the most important things I think you can have is a passport, and then use it. Use it. Get out of the country. I don't think you can really appreciate the opportunities you have here. Not perfect, but you have them until you leave and go see some other folks in other countries and you absorb it. And then you might realize we're not right about everything. We may be able to pick up some things in those places that may benefit your life, and maybe not. But a passport and travel is and I'm a happy dude
All right, all
with
right.
my family.
Excellent, excellent. And I noticed you got a T-shirt there that's got something going on there. What do you got going on with that?
Which one is the one behind me here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a shirt that was done by one of our sons, Julian. He he's amazed us. My wife is an artist. She has an art studio here in our town, and he was clearly inspired by her. He paints, he does graphic arts, and this piece here was actually a painting that he did maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and we turned that into a shirt, fully sublimated, and we took that shirt to Paris, and there was a lady in a little boutique behind the Notre Dame who grabbed it and wanted to keep it. Those shirts, 10 of them disappeared. We don't know what happened, so we keep watching to make sure she's not selling them online. I
eBay.
love, yeah, exactly. But we acknowledge his talent, and we want him to continue to do that. And the actual original first shirt that he made is not that one. That's a copy. The first one I gave to Usain Bolt 4 years ago. I gave him the original one because I wanted him to have it. He has been so great to me and my career, and I just want to give him that. So he has the first one. And then so now we're working on more shirts and masks and all kinds of things that can give us, give him an artistic touch to what we're needing right now in terms of self protection, all that kind of stuff. But we are behind our kids. Our motto in our house was, we practice unconditional love in this house, which means love with no conditions. And whatever it is you try to do that you think you want to do, you're inspired to do, we want you to do that. And so one of his passions is that. He was a fencer in college, has done art. The other son is a theater kid. He graduated from Chicago in Chicago about a few months ago. So he's an actor. And we want those guys to pursue their dreams. And I think that whatever we're doing, Blue Panther Media, Mappy Sports Network, Lewis Johnson Media Group, whatever we're doing, a part of our energy should be to inspire this next generation to embrace a dream and move forward on it, whatever it is, even if we don't understand it. And so that's why I have that there, is to constantly remind me of what our lives have been about and what we want to continue to pay forward to the next generation.
Okay, all right. And last question, what is ahead for Lewis Johnson?
Man, I hope some airline miles. I told you I got this zero on my I got this big zero on my airline mileage account. Listen, I think just being able to continue to enjoy what I do, and then inspire some people that they can also achieve a dream. I tell young people all the time that the story that I have lived so far is, on paper, it makes no sense. A guy could go from, no scholarship to walk on to All-American to conversation in the hotel lobby that took me to Europe to change my life, and met my wife and had kids, and the career in television so far, which is not over for sure. But we don't live our lives on paper. We live our lives through the dreams and in the hard work it takes to make those dreams come true. And for every closed door we run into, the longer we look at the closed door, the longer it's going to take us to see the open door. And that's the way I'm looking at COVID-19 right now, because the COVID-19 closed the door on a lot of stuff for a lot of people, me included. And the longer we stand and look at that closed door and get caught up in all the noise, the longer it'll take us to go and look for the open doors so we can walk through those and do what we're supposed to be doing next. So that's the way I'm trying to treat this. And it took a while to get there, Charles. You know what I'm saying? It took a while to get there, because this is like a slap in the face, totally unexpected. But we can begin to start choosing to look for that open door. And I think that's what's exciting about right now. I've got 3 or 4 or 5 open doors I'm trying to get through, and you know, take the family with us and inspire them. And then hopefully we can inspire some young people through what you're doing and what we're doing.
Excellent, excellent. That track speed will come in handy.
Yeah, you know, what little I got left, you know.
All right, Louis. Hey, I appreciate having you on. Always, man, always. And, you know, keep doing what you're doing. You know, sooner or later, you'll be able to get back out there and, you know, get with the sports and get on the sidelines and share some more of those great stories with us. So, again, thank you for coming on to the show today. All right. And,
Pleasure.
hey, man, hold on to those plane tickets. Sooner or later, you're going to need them.
You got it. And hopefully one day it's coming to Houston to help you or work with you on
There
something.
you
down
go,
there.
man. Love to have you.
Charles.
Love to have you.
Thank you for everything you're doing, man.
All right, fantastic.
Much respect. Much respect.
Have a great one. Have a
You
great
too,
one.
Charles. Thank you.
All righty. All right, now we're going to the man himself, Mr. DJ Yams, with our intermission, bringing us some more of that great music that he plays. DJ.
MG the DJ.
Twerk it, baby.
They probably got me down, but they hadn't got a song. Seems like the whole city go against me. Every time I'm in the street, I hear ya, 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 ya,
Yams G the DJ.
standing by. Cluster strike is go for launch. Enemy gunship inbound. Take cover. Only a few ahead of you. Step it up. Personal radar drone standing by. Cluster strike is go for launch.
This is Builder 2-0, good copy. Cluster strike away.
EV2 get to the AO. Free for all. Eliminate all targets. Enemy personal radar is got a personal radar drone. Cluster strike is go for launch. Got a personal radar drone ready for action. Personal radar in the air. Got a personal You're in the lead. Keep it up. Got a personal radar drone ready for action. Enemy personal radar in the air. Got a personal radar drone ready for escort. Enemy cluster strike incoming. Keep fighting. Stop this. Got a personal radar drone ready for escort. go for launch. Enemy cluster strike incoming. Take cover.
Loader 2-0. Copy.
Enemy counter UAV online.
Get him.
All right, welcome back. Okay, Mr. DJ Yams with the sounds once again. Thanks, Mr. Yams. And Brandon Butler, BT Tech Tiger, our competitive gamer here, taking people down. Well, we have a special guest coming on now who knows all about competitive gaming, and that would be our second guest here, and that is Mr. Caleb Glooby. Hello, Caleb.
What's up? How you doing, Charles?
Oh, doing great, doing great. Yeah, you're down there in the tropical world of Florida, but I hear it's not too tropical right now.
It's a little crazy right now. It's stormy outside, and you might hear some thunder throughout this.
Right. Hey, they didn't put that on the brochure.
Yeah, not at all. No.
All right. Well, you have been in that space of being a competitive gamer, doing that, and we are all about here on Play to Win talking about esports and all of the things that surround esports culture, and of course, the ins and outs of it. Tell us a little bit about what it takes. What is the makeup to really be a competitive gamer?
It takes time, more than anything. And what I've seen in players, and not only the collegiate scene, but the professional scene as well, is that a lot of the people that can't make it or won't make it is because they don't put in the same amount of hours that the players that do make it. And it's not just in the play, it's also out of the game. It's also doing what you do in business. It's how you treat yourself when you walk around, when you do your workouts. When outside of the game actually matters almost more than inside of the game because of how much physical and mental stress you put on yourself. And that's what it takes could be a whole 3-year course. I'm not gonna lie, but it really does have a stress that on players.
Right. Okay. And we are talking about the competitive world of esports, but of course there's so much more to esports, and you've been in that competitive space playing the games. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but also talk about the business side of it, something that you're gravitating into right now. Talk to us about some of the business aspects of esports.
The business aspects of esports is what I like to call the Wild Wild West. I'm sure you've heard this before, and I'm sure everyone listening has heard about the Wild Wild West of esports. There's really no ground rules for what we can and can't do. And that stems from everything. So you get a company like 100 Thieves who's going to be more apparel focused, but also still has professional teams and streamers. But then you have a company like FaZe who really focuses on the streaming aspect and the marketing of those streamers. And that's two totally different companies that compete against each other every single day. And that's amazing. But also there's so many different things in collegiate esports, in professional esports, in local tournament organizations, in growing tournament organizations, like in the Overwatch League, the CW League. They're run by the same Blizzard Activision, but they have totally different how they run and how they're managed and how they're developed. And that's just crazy on its own. So the business of esports is really wild, wild west, and how you maneuver it really depends on how much knowledge you have and how much understanding you have about how far you can go with esports. And once you get that kind of basic grasp underset, then you have the ability to really kind of take over esports and really develop a good esports company like what 100 Thieves done in the last 2 years.
Okay, all right. We're looking at now universities bringing on esports as a sports program there, and bringing in competitive esports players, onto teams there, and giving out scholarships to these players to play there. Talk to us a little bit about what's happening with the conference that you're working with.
So I work for the New England Collegiate Conference, and we've seen everything in college esports. So you can have a program that's starting up this semester that's being just run by students with minimal funding, and they can join 1 or maybe 2 leagues at most. And then you can have the really big programs that can compete in everything and have 100+ players and have literally all the bells and whistles that professional esports has on a collegiate scene, which is really, really cool. But to talk about a couple of things that you kind of pointed out, specifically in the scholarships and the tuitions of these students, I really think that the future of esports is going to be through collegiate esports and how that development works. And there's so much more that is going to happen, but basically each school is like their own professional organization. And as they develop, they learn their own strategies on how they want to continue developing and change and develop and work and do all these kind of different things, because each and every one of them are doing different things. So you have one school building a professional organization in-house because they have the greatest players in the world, or you have another school that is just trying to have a good time and enjoy the experience of being a collegiate gamer. And that's what I really think is really cool about collegiate esports.
Okay, all right. You are viewing Play to Win. I'm your host, Charles Gentry, aka The Oracle. And my guest right now is Caleb Glooby, and we're talking about esports, all aspects of it, collegiate as well as professional, and then the esports culture. When you're talking about the business of esports, it's wide-ranging because you're talking about everything from the designers and the people who actually make the games to those who play the games competitively, to those who just play the games for fun, and the merchandising that goes around esports. You know, there's a lot of things happening there, and consequently, there's a lot of opportunities in esports. So tell us about the opportunity particularly that you're moving into and taking advantage of, Caleb.
So I actually am working in a lot of different opportunities all at once. Like you said earlier, jack of all trades, but I really do actually everything in every aspect. So to speak to exactly what I'm doing and the opportunities I'm a part of, External Gaming, I'm the executive director by title, but that does not at all mean what I do. I do anything from partner relations to strategic data analysis to management of players at some points, to working just other with staff and communicating with staff on developing projects. So there's lots of stuff going on. And in the New England Collegiate Conference, just as a side note, I'm developing Discord servers, I'm managing interfaces, I'm creating rule sets for our league, I'm working with partners to build out our league and develop on that. I'm working with schools to develop their schools, but also work with them and develop a league with them in our Season 0 coming up this year. And I'm also doing my own company to brand my stream and to my development, and working with over 5 staff right now and developing what we think is what would look good for the future, but also paying attention to doing something more like Devin Nash and making sure that we understand the industry and we understand how we develop into it. We understand what multiple revenue streams look like, and we also develop partner relationships that are beneficial not just for me but for my staff and past me, when this kind of all comes to fruition and really starts to develop a larger company. So there's lots of different opportunities for esports, and just to talk about that, I think that esports as a whole will have well over 250,000 jobs by the next quarter, if it doesn't already. And that's not even talking about game development, because esports and game development are 2 totally different companies, and 2 totally different game demographics. So game development already has well over 100 million jobs. There's tons and tons and tons of jobs in the development of, let's just use titles here, Overwatch. I guarantee you they have over 40 guys working on that at any given time, right? Because it's such a massive game, and there's all kinds of little things that have to go on to make this thing such a moving beast. But just Blizzard Activision, they have a whole team of that people behind them that are making sure that their games are running and that the servers are updated and that their servers don't go down, right? So just being proactive in that regard. There's so many people that are really on the gaming, but also the esports specifically industry.
Okay, all right. Well, some of the games that you have played, you've named some of them. Tell us about the games that you were into as a competitive player.
I wouldn't say I'm into one, mostly because of what I have to do for work. I really pay attention to 4 major games, and this would be CSGO, Overwatch, Fortnite, and Valorant currently. And these 4 games have been kind of the focus for the last kind of 6.5, 7 years of my life. Whether it's been playing them or watching them or competing in them, I've really been totally just focused on making sure that I have competitive skill, but also that I understand them and I understand what's going on behind them and why businesses are making decisions behind them and how businesses work and what businesses are failing and what businesses are working, right? And all these kind of little aspects that kind of just go into my repertoire of knowledge throughout the years.
Okay. Well, it's obvious that you must be going through a couple of cans of energy drink to get all of that done.
It's actually kind of funny. I don't drink caffeine at all. And I'm not the typical gamer. My business partner actually makes fun of me for this, but if I had the option between chips and soda and pop and all that stuff, I would literally just choose water and a thing of grapes or a thing of watermelon in the fridge, because I feel like if you treat your body right, you will have so much more opportunities in the future than if you don't treat your body right. And I feel like a lot of gamers kind of get this bad kind of repertoire, this bad kind of like scene where it's you're drinking Mountain Dew and you're eating Doritos, right? And while I do know people that do that, I can honestly tell you that most of the people that I've met in esports are the kind of people that would rather go find some really good food for more expensive than go down to McDonald's and grab a burger, you know?
Okay, all right. Well, we're looking at the explosion of esports, the industry itself, and it's growing just tremendously so. What do you see happening? You talked about the collegiate scene and how that's developing. What do you see happening in terms of the professional scene in esports? Because, it's not like the NFL or the NBA or the NHL where there's one major league and everybody's trying to make it to that league. Esports has so many branches, so many arms reaching out there. So, tell us what you see happening on the esports scene professionally, and where do you think it's all gonna, wash out to? Is it gonna stay the way that it is, or is it evolving into something else?
I think that I'm going to speak to a couple aspects here, but I think that it's going to start with the esports scene has to fail at some point, and it's going to be sometime soon. Mostly because of what esports industry leaders have been currently doing. I'm not sure if you're aware of the esports bubble, but basically the esports bubble can be summed up in quick by people are lying about the numbers in which they're bringing in and therefore charging more than what they should be. And once people realize that, the esports industry will collapse and fall back on itself and then develop into a professional scene. And this is where I'm kind of seeing a couple different avenues. What I'm liking most is when people start realizing that Overwatch is nothing like League of Legends, right? You get into this aspect of football and hockey. They're 2 professional leagues that people are going towards and they have players playing in. But you can be proficient in football and hockey, but you can't. There's only been one experience of MLB and NFL, and that player played for a long time in both, but it was hard, right? It was mentally straining. So in the regards to esports, I think what's going to end up happening is someone is going to figure out that Overwatch and League of Legends and all of them are going to be regulated on their own and have their own leagues, much like the NHL and the NFL and the NBA, right? That'll eventually happen. And once this is kind of regulated on their own, they'll eventually have their own filming scene and their own development scene and their own local scenes, like the local hockey scene back in Toronto, Canada, or the development scene of football down in Houston, Texas, right? It's different in every area. But obviously, as you grow up and as you develop into this, you are taught into these games. And I love saying this, but esports is like football about 100 years ago. People are saying that you wouldn't watch it, like you can't play it, you can't do this professionally, you're never going to make money from it. Well, fast forward 30 years, the NCAA gets formed because they wanted to make football safer. Fast forward another 30 years, the NFL is now the biggest thing in the US, right? It's almost dumb to say that esports isn't going anywhere, because it's going to be bigger. It's going to stay around. It's going to be here to stay. And it's just how we deal with it now that will shape the future of esports and the future development of esports. And I really do think that almost 30 years in now from the first massive tournament for a Ferrari, and I can't remember the name of the game, but it's already showing that we're willing to create an industry behind it. It's just, what does it look like and how does it develop? And it's really going to show off when the collegiate scene gets done, when the high school scene gets really up and steady, when the development of players doesn't just start at 20, it starts at 13 and 14, and these kids are starting to learn how to better treat themselves, how to better teach their hands what to do for muscle memory, how to react faster, how to train their reaction time, because these are all things you can develop through your life. And once that starts to get taught, and once the kind of younger generation starts to get taught, the future of esports and the generation of esports will start to be more clear, so to say.
Right. We'll talk about it from the aspect of spectators watching esports. They're now building esports stadiums and esports arenas across the country, and we already have them around the world. So how do you see that all evolving? Will it be like the other major league traditional sports where every major city has an arena there? Do you think it will go there?
I think it's already kind of at that point, and Overwatch League is showing that. There's really two aspects to kind of viewership, and it's live and not live. So live viewers kind of works in two ways now. It's the ones watching the events kind of during the stream, or physically at the event. And in a lot of cases, there are stadiums built up around the U.S. already. I can speak to the Boston Uprising Arena in Patriot Place. I've been there. It's a beautiful place. I could speak to the Overwatch League's main hub in L.A., beautiful place as well, right? There's already these massive hubs that are there, and to say that it won't continue to grow is absolutely absurd. But also the live component, or the non-live component, where it's the television. I mean, the NCAA or the NECC, my company, has just signed a deal with ESTV to push our content to linear TV, the same way that the NFL pushes their stuff to ESPN, right? So it's already there. The infrastructure is already there. It's just a matter of getting the real focus on it to be, hey, this isn't just some kid chewing Doritos and drinking Mountain Dew. It's a group of people playing this professionally at the highest level.
Right. And of course, whenever you talk about growing something, you have to talk about sponsorship and marketing, advertising as part of that mix. You talked earlier about the numbers, and how the numbers are being presented. And this is, of course, what marketers and sponsors really hang their hat on. What kind of numbers are you putting up? And that's the kind of dollars we're going to put into it. So do you see esports developing these kind of relationships with major sponsors that brings in the kind of money to grow it that the NFL and other leagues, traditional leagues, are bringing in now? Do you see that happening in esports?
It's funny you say that, because we are working on doing stuff like that on my own, but also I can easily see it doing the kind of numbers that the NFL is doing or the NBA is doing, because we've pretty much at that viewership number where we're competing with the NFL on a regular basis. But to show you that sports actually do, like the NFL Alumni Association is working with NECC to better esports, right? It's not like sports doesn't recognize esports. Sports recognizes esports to a high level, to a point where the NFL Alumni Association was working with us to develop minor things, such as just getting a caster to a tournament. We're working on getting an amazing caster on this tournament that we're going to be doing in next weekend, right? So there's lots and lots going on, but I gotta tell you, it's if sports and esports can't collaborate in the way that we're currently trying to do it, it's not going to happen to where everyone succeeds. It's going to happen to where esports companies will do one thing that's kind of pushing another company out of their way, right? And it's going to be harmful at the start, but once we get settled, it will be like how the Patriots treat the Giants, they're competing companies that are helping each other out in lots of ways, and they're working on sending players and trading players and developing salaries for each other. And if one doesn't succeed, the other doesn't succeed, right? And that's where we're going to get to eventually.
Okay. Becoming frenemies.
Exactly. Becoming frenemies. It's a great word for it.
All right. Well, again, traditional sports has its icons. It has those players that everyone knows in the league. Is esports, is it dependent upon creating those kinds of icons? Is the time coming? We know that in esports, those people who really follow it know who some of the top players are. But is the day coming where these players will be household names like we have in traditional sports?
I think yes and no. It's going to take some time. And I've said this a couple times now. It's going to take some time. But everyone knows who Ninja is. Tyler Blevins is one of the best players and the best examples for the crossover to major sports. And the best example I've ever heard about the crossover to major sports is in how there's a large hole, and esports is sitting on one side of that hole and the rest of the world is sitting on the other. And the second someone tries to make that jump like Tyler Blevins has, their name will become subsidiary to every household, right? And not many people have tried to do this, but you start to see these smaller names peek in there that esports knows as one of the biggest names. But Shroud, Pokimane, these people are people that are not just esports names now. They are household names in a lot of places because they've done this development outside of esports that is really starting to push their name to be household names, so to say. But as esports gets into developing and continue to increase salaries and to continuing to make these players celebrities, you'll see these players become more of celebrities, not just in esports, but also outside of esports as well.
Okay, all right. In terms of business, you have said, you are on the business end of it now and doing a lot of things. Where does that begin? Do you begin as a esports player and then work your way up to, the business side of it? Do you start in business and then come over to esports? Where's the happy medium? What do you think is the best mix if you really want to be in the business side of esports?
I've seen a lot of different examples of this, and I'll give a couple good ones. Nadeshot was a professional player of the Call of Duty League, obviously the owner of 100 Thieves right now. And I think he learned an absolute boat ton while being a professional player and developed an organization behind his image of what he thought esports was. Obviously, that's working. That's a good image, and it's developing well. But you also see something like Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a business professional. His motto is to develop people more than anything else. And he went over and invested into Play Versus and sent a substantial amount of money to own a partial ownership of that company. And I think that every way you put it, it might work. Obviously, if you don't have the grind for it, don't jump into esports. It's a lot more. It's a lot harder to get into. It's a lot more conversations than normal business, because you can go and start a business today, and while it might not succeed, if you start a business in esports, the fail rate's over 98% instead of 95%. We have that difficulty curve because it's so new and there's so many different ways to do it. And no one's got a perfect system, and you can't really follow a perfect system, and no one's willing to share their systems, right? So if you don't know what you're doing in esports, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can learn. There's lots of ways to learn. There's lots of podcasts. There's lots of conversations that you can go ahead and try and develop your understanding of esports until you get to that point where you're like, all right, let's go,
Right. Well, what's the basic culture? Is there a lot of I know I've heard it talked about that esports is kind of a tight-knit group, tight-knit family, but at the same time it's competitive. What's the basic culture? Is it people helping people, or is it kind of just every man for himself?
I think there's two kind of cultures that really strongly represent esports, and there's the casual gamer and there's the competitive gamer. And like you said, I'll touch on this, the competitive gamer group is tight-knit based on their games. So a professional Overwatch scene is really closer together than they are to another scene, but a professional CSGO scene is really close together, right? So each scene has their own professional teams, right? Going back to football, you have your close teams, right? Your teams are very close families. When they're on that team, they're families. Same thing happens with esports. If you're on Astralis out in Europe, you're a close family. If you're on 100 Thieves out in Los Angeles, you're a close-knit family. But then you also run into the casual gamer, and this is where we get our bad reputation from, is the casual community. The casual community is not the greatest. There's lots of misogynists. There's lots of racism. There's lots of poor representations of what competitive gaming looks like, because of just it's you're online. You're behind a facade of your username, right? And that really kind of allows you to be really free, but also say things and damage esports in a way that was almost irreparable in 2008, 2009, when the Call of Duty kind of really was getting slammed with their kind of background of all the toxic game chats, and on CNN when they just got absolutely slammed with audio of really not, like, every second word was a bleep, right? So and you get this kind of background culture of our casual gamers and how really bad some people are in the casual scene. And then you say, well, this is everyone, right? This is totally all of esports. And that's not the case. That's not who we are. That's not what we're looking to do. That's not how we are. The college scene is so much better than the casual scene, and a lot of the college players are casual players. But the new development and the next generation coming up with Gen Z and being way more open and way more understanding is really going to develop how this kind of shapes in the future.
Okay, all right. And you know, the Gen Z, or all the way back to the millennials, these are people who grew up with gaming. So do you see esports as becoming their traditional sports, what traditional sports was to previous generations? Do you see that being the esports world? I mean, will esports players someday be on Wheaties boxes?
I mean, my business partner loves this conversation because he asked me that same question a couple nights ago. And he's got two young kids who are pretty much getting to that 10, 11, 12 age where it's, do I go play sports or do I buy them a console? You know, like what's their future going to be like? And I'm like, and this is my best answer to this. And I'm sure it'll change in 5 years, because it will change in 5 years. Buy them a console, but also sign them up to play in that local league, because I think that esports has the ability to develop into something that is local league kind of style, but right now it's not there. And if you hinder them and tell them that they can't play video games with their buddy that they met at school, it's not going to help them in any way. But also, physical sports is still such an avenue and such a growth for a lot of people that I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't tear my ACL in soccer a few years ago, right? It's a huge piece of who I am, but also it doesn't kind of change what I would be doing. It really just kind of shows me how I could do it and make it more sports-like in the future, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. The development of games, game design, and all that's happening, you know, with game companies, whether it's Activision Blizzard or, you know, other game companies, what have you seen in the leap in technology the last couple of years? How has that, you know, that leap taken place? What do you see when you look at games now as compared to even 3 years ago?
3 years ago was a long time ago for technology. Obviously not a long time ago, but in the terms of technology, 3 years ago we were on way worse CPUs and way worse GPUs, and our computers weren't nearly as fast, and our monitors were barely hitting 120 frames per second. I think that the development in esports in just 3 years is crazy, and I'm sure that someone will point out that there were really good monitors out then, but the ability to play games in 8K 120 frames per second now, and obviously that's not recommended in any way, but the ability to do that on $20,000, $30,000 computers is unreal. And the development in just not only games, but like Becker College has the second best game development thing in all of the US, game development program in all of the US. And how they're developing students and how they're developing the back end and all these little pieces that are going into the growing of esports, right? Because it's not just us on the professional scene, it's the players, it's the writers, it's the coders, right? Everyone that's getting into this and everyone that's being a part of this is really bringing a massive, massive piece to the table. And just the growth in this and the growth in how it's going and how people are developing that is really, really cool, to the point where we got told 30, 40 years ago that CPUs wouldn't be able to get past a certain point because they wouldn't be able to reduce the size of capacitors. Guess what? We broke that. We broke the tile. I can't remember what his name was, but it was the something method that eventually we'd hit a point where it'd be like, okay, we can't go any smaller than this. Well, we found a way because now our GPUs are faster than they ever should have been. Our CPUs are faster than they ever should have been. And we've beaten that hurdle, right? And what's next? What's our next block of what we can and can't do with technology? And it's going to be really cool to see how we go ahead and try and develop past that, you know?
Okay, all right. Let me throw this one at you. We have 5G coming up. How do you think 5G is going to change gaming?
I think 5G will change gaming in more latency than anything else. It's getting a bad rap right now for creating and developing cancer, which is one of those fun things because 4G was supposed to create and develop cancer as well, you know? Right. So don't hold your phone near your pants or whatever, you know? It was all these kind of things. But I think that once we start to see 5G, 5G, just a reminder, is a higher wave frequency, which means that it needs to be closer to a tower in order to work, so that shorter range towers but faster speeds in towers. So with the development of 5G and how that looks is probably going to be lower latency for games. So while I sit on an average 30 millisecond ping where I'm currently at, it'll probably go down to 2022 ping where I'm at right now, and that'll continue until we get I love saying this, but Elon Musk's StarNet, while it's a Star Trek theory right now, it's probably where we're going to be going. That satellite kind of pattern where you have 30 ping connecting to the exact opposite of the world, that's going to be the point where we're at in the future, where these games can be played worldwide truly, not just kind of semi-locally. It'll be played worldwide, and you can connect with anyone you want within the entire globe. And that's when we're going to really see competitive games take a global stance, you know?
Okay, all right. Tell me this, on the social side of it, you know, a kid in, let's say, Brooklyn, New York can be playing another kid in, in Tokyo. How do you see esports and gaming playing a role in what happens and the changes that will happen socially moving forward?
I think it'll be crazy, and there's no really better wording for it. My dad's not really well versed in esports, but when I pitched him the idea of what NECC was and how we could bring it across borders and really challenge the competitive collegiate scene across borders, he pretty much explained to me that there's never been anything like it before, except for in Europe Soccer League. And what we've seen in the Europe Soccer League is that first of all, Mexico, just south of Mexico, there's a couple countries that went over a war over soccer, right? They actually went to war over soccer. So while it could be war creating, it really brings it to everyone's able to do this, right? And it will change the kind of viewpoint on how people interact with each other, to not caring about race or color or whatever it looks like in the next 3 weeks, you know, because with the last 3 weeks it's been kind of crazy. But like it's going to change it to be a point where gaming as a culture, as an entire phenomenon, will eventually create this culture around it that will develop people into a way that really are able to meet each other across borders, across countries. And I can honestly say that I never would have met a lot of the people that I've met, and now that I have, it's a totally different viewpoint that I have on the world, you know?
When you began in gaming, when you began in competitive gaming, did you yourself see that it would get to the point where it is now, or was it just you were doing something fun with your friends and you thought that's the way that it basically would stay?
My first kind of stint in competitive gaming was a small CS:GO team, and I'm going to bring race into this just because I feel like that's been a slight topic of the discussion, but it was 2 Asian guys, a Korean kid, and a black dude that were on my team. And honestly, I never would have met any of them without gaming, but I honestly say that at the time they were my closest friends. And I honestly think that at the time I was thinking, let's play some video games and do really well and make some money off of it, because I wasn't old enough to figure out that I could make a career out of it. Although I was like, this is a cool thing to do, and I'm sure that there's a way to monetize it. I've always thought of outcomes, and I was sure at the time that there would be a way to monetize it in the future. But as I developed 1 year, 2 years, 5 years later, I really started to see like, hey, this is something that's much bigger than I initially thought it was. And looking at some of my folders on my desktop right now, I can just say like my thoughts 6 months ago were smaller than my thoughts now, you know? I think that as I develop, I have a bigger and brighter future of how I want to develop. And every single day that I put an effort into it, I can see that esports is developing and esports is growing. And I'm not the only one. There's thousands upon thousands of people who really want to make a push for professional esports and show the world what it looks like. And that's what's really gonna change the world.
Okay, all right. Okay, all right. I want to recap some of those things that we talked about. For those who may have just popped in, you are listening to and viewing Play to Win. I'm your host, Charles Gentry, aka The Oracle. My guest is Caleb Gluby. And we're talking, of course, about esports and competitive gaming. So running back over some of the things that we went over, Caleb, and just quickly summarize some of those things again when we hit on them. The change between where esports was years ago and what's happening now in terms of people building the business of esports. What's the climate like, and what's it going to take to make esports a household thing on the level of traditional sports? What's it going to take?
Like I said before, I think that esports is going to take a huge bump before it figures it out, and it'll be in the failing of companies, and we'll see it in the FaZe versus Tfue contract, how that churns out and how that kind of develops. But in the summary of kind of everything that we've said so far, esports and developing into that household kind of brilliant kind of celebrity kind of area, that's going to take a huge amount of pressure, but also a failure of a lot of different aspects in terms of the contracts we currently have, in terms of the advertisement we currently have, and then the development outside of esports. Because a lot of the kind of partnerships that we're seeing is esports companies partnering with tech companies, which is pretty much the same area. Once we start developing into your mom and pop shops looking to host an event, that's when it's going to be esports' household.
Okay. What's it going to take for sponsors, advertisers, marketers to trust putting money into esports as they've been putting money into other things like television or into things like traditional sports? What's it going to take for those same major companies to drop those same kind of dollars in esports?
Well, it has a lot of different aspects that it could kind of throw at it. The biggest one I gotta say is it's the best demographic out of the entire world. What advertisers and what marketers are looking for is lifetime buyer value. And that's come up all over college classes and all over kind of that kind of business kind of world, is you're looking for lifetime buyers. McDonald's does this great with their kids meals, right? You're getting lifetime buyers straight off the bat, right? And esports really shows off that kind of lifetime buyers thing as well. If you can if you can figure out how to advertise to esports, you'll be able to have that new lifetime buyer, because guess what? A largely male dominated place wants to buy products, right? They want to buy mice, they want to buy keyboards, but they also want to buy things like desks. They also want to buy a new carpet, a new couch, right? And if you're able to advertise to this group, if you're able to be the big company that's advertising to this group, you will make money. I guarantee it. It's just you have to advertise properly, and you have to advertise in kind of an effective new way that hasn't been done before, which you can't really follow the old methods of TV advertising, because people don't have that kind of attention span to go sit through those TV ads anymore. They now have to be able to advertise you've got 4 or 5 seconds, sell your company, right? Sell why I should buy a product from you. And that's what's going to take. It's going to take these companies learning this new method of advertising to these people.
Okay, all right. What does it take to be a professional esports player or competitive gamer? What's the qualities?
Takes a lot. There's a lot of different types of professional players I've seen. There's the natural skill ones. Shroud, everyone thinks he's an alien experiment coming straight out of Area 51. And he is an unnatural talent to being able to aim and be able to pick up games really, really quickly. And that's an extreme. But to be a professional gamer and to be a part of the professional community, you have to have the dedication. You have to be able to put in the time in and out of the game. And in all honesty, you have to love it. If you don't love it, you're not going to get in the professional scene, because you're going to hate every single day that you're doing it. You have to be able to say, I'm sitting down and I'm enjoying what I'm doing every single day. If you're not, you won't be able to do it.
Right. And again, talking about those esports arenas that are being built across the U.S. and actually across the globe now. Do you see it coming to the point where, San Francisco has its team and its stadium? Los Angeles has its team and its stadium. New York has its team and its stadium. Do you see it as getting to that point where there will be a focal point of an arena in each major city? Or can esports be different and support a number of arenas in a particular place?
I think esports is going to follow kind of the sports model where, like I said before, Overwatch is not like League of Legends. Just like the New York Yankees aren't the same as the New York Rangers. They'll have their own stadiums, they'll have their own followings, but since they're both in New York, you probably will follow both of them if you live in the area. And you see this right now in Toronto. Toronto has a massive NBA 2K league, but also they have a massive Call of Duty league and a massive Overwatch league. All three of them have their own places to play, and all three of them have their own places to spectate. And that's really, really cool. And that's going to be the future of esports right now, is the Toronto kind of model right now. That's where we're kind of developing to the future.
Okay. Are the spectators broken up into, segments just like the games are broken up into segments? In other words, will a spectator sit and watch Overwatch, and then that same spectator go back to the stadium to watch Fortnite? Or is it really broken up into people watching one particular game?
I'd say more along the lines of genres. So an FPS genre would not watch a card game genre. So a Hearthstone and a Heroes of the Storm kind of doesn't really have a crossover, where a Hearthstone and the Magic the Gathering has a crossover. And those two kind of games are almost identical, but they have very, very different meanings and very, very different cards, right? So if you're playing an FPS game like Overwatch or Rainbow Six Siege that has characters but also has a map, and it's kind of a slower but also faster paced game all at the same time, you'll probably have some crossover there, but you won't have perfect crossover. Perfect crossover is when 100% of the users watch one game and 100% of the users watch another game, right? So there is going to be some crossover from game to game, but it's not going to be anything like what we currently are predicting esport. Oh, my computer just lagged a little bit. It's not gonna be like anything that we see in current esports, kind of where a lot of people are following every type of game. No, it's gonna be more like sports, where if you watch football, you watch football, and you probably know about hockey and you probably have seen some games, but you don't watch hockey religiously. And if you're a big American, you probably watch football and baseball, but you probably watch one or the other, or know a group of friends that watch one or the other. And sometimes you watch a game with those kind of friends. It's just you not pay attention to it as much as whatever your main sport is. And once we find out what those main sports look like, we'll start to see what the future of this looks like as well.
Okay. All right. Recap for us one more time, your companies and what you're doing.
So I'm working in a bunch of different areas. I'm building External Gaming, which is a small professional esports org out of Florida. I'm working in the New England Collegiate Conference, which is building esports for colleges across the U.S. And I'm also working on my own personal brand, which is basically my stream brand, my personal brand, my YouTube, my Instagram, my social media, as well as developing kind of the business behind esports and understanding it and managing it and helping other people develop their business behind it. And that's all kind of falling under that kind of glove brand, you know?
And in developing all of these different facets, you know, you went from, again, being a competitive gamer and getting into more of the business side. STEM, you know, is a big thing in schools now. They're trying to get all the kids into technology, into science, into math, into engineering. What do you think that connection will be moving forward between STEM and between gaming or esports? You know, is it going to be where a kid who loves gaming will gravitate into that field of STEM, or is it, you know, something that's totally separate? Is gaming going to help it?
I think gaming helps the STEM category a little bit, not in the way that we think currently. I think still computer sciences, since it's not part of the STEM category of science, technology, engineering and manufacturing, because it's one of those kind of outlets that it's always had its own program, because there's always been computer engineering in the last 50 years. There's always been that kind of technical need. I think once we kind of recognize computer sciences as a STEM program really strongly, the same way we do with our engineering and our manufacturing classes, it'll help that kind of student population grow in STEM. But then again, like I said, like high school esports isn't a great place right now. It's probably 5-6 years away from having a decent product that students want to play in every single day. And once we get to that point where players are really looking forward to high school esports, that's when we start to see the kind of development with the male population caring about more about their academic studies, right? The growing female population in esports, because there isn't really a female population in esports. The growing kind of culture in esports, where there's a lot more opportunities, because now there will be more opportunities in the players for tournament organizers. So more tournaments will pop up and more opportunities will pop up for these players, and more kind of development for collegiate and professional esports will happen for these players. And it really starts from the younger age kids getting into esports and having that proper STEM kind of growth pattern. And like you brought up, like STEM is probably a way for the future of esports to grow. But then again, there is no perfect way, and we can't predict the future. So STEM might be a way, but we don't know yet.
Okay. You touched on something that's very significant. There are not that many as a percentage women in esports. What's it going to take, to get more women involved, more girls involved in esports, and not just the competitive gaming side of it, but as spectators and in all facets of it? You know, what's the thing that's going to be a breakthrough for women to get more involved with it, because it's so male dominated right now?
I think that females in esports have a great opportunity right now currently, but it's not as good as it needs to be. And there's lots of different ways that we could go about this, but women in esports are currently, the reason that they're pushed out of the kind of ringer, so to say, is because of the kind of misogynistic culture that there's currently out there. we talk about the history of men versus women, and we know that women didn't have voting rights till long after men, right? If we were to go off that path, I think that's kind of something that we're currently seeing is a kind of in esports kind of piece. But there's also not really a lot of opportunities for women. Women, while they could be at the same level as gaming, they're not kind of, they don't like it, dude. To be honest, they don't like to push themselves as much as men do in gaming, because they're being pushed down 10 times more. They're being neglected. They're being thrown against. Anything that happens with women is highly objectified in a lot of ways. And while competitive play from the women's scene isn't great right now, it's because there's so much challenging opportunities for these women where people are pushing them down and really putting them kind of in the drain, and then not viewing it and then not streaming it, right? Tournament organizers don't want to organize tournaments just for women because it doesn't show anything other than, oh, we got a good brand that represents women. No, it's there's no opportunities, and then there's no, like, when there is an opportunity, the women are just like, oh, or sorry, the men look at the woman and say, oh, we don't like this, right? we're not gonna watch this because it's just women, and that's really bad, and it's really a bad culture in that regard. But what it's really gonna take is a culture shift, and it's really gonna take a development period again. And I say this with a lot of things. It's gonna take a development period where people start to set back and realize this is a huge culture. My sister would have gotten into competitive gaming if she wasn't told every single game that, hey, you sound like a little boy, or you're a terrible girl, you know? And that sucks. That really, really does suck for a lot of people. And once that changes, once people start recognizing that hey, female in gaming have a huge population already. Let's focus on them. Let's develop them. Let's get them better. But not only better, let's give them brands behind them. Like the biggest brands on Twitch sometimes are females. I'm going to use Pokimane as my best example. She is one of the brightest and smartest businesswomen in esports. She has a beautiful brand behind her. She has a makeup company that has thousands upon thousands of girls in esports kind of that are aware of it, but also girls outside of esports aware of her brand as well. She has a massive following, not only in males, but also females, that is uncountered in this space. And that kind of focus, that real focus on women and that focus on developing women is going to be what develops esports in the future.
Okay, all right. And again, hitting on the social issues. We see a lot of unrest going on out there right now in terms of equality and people marching, people wanting things changed. How do you see that esports and Gen Z and those people who are out there in the streets can really contribute to that narrative and can help things to change?
I think it starts with stopping what we're doing in voice chat right now, and I've heard a lot of different arguments for taking away voice chat or developing it in a different way, but I think it just starts with each individual person thinking, am I saying the right thing? Am I saying something that could be interpreted as toxic or rude in any way? I said this on stream a couple days ago. I got into a game chat and one girl said, hey guys, what do you guys want me to play? And the guy just said, girl? Right? It's like, it's so dumb, but that little piece right there, she didn't say another word the rest of the game. It killed her. It killed her wanting to play the game with him, right? She now doesn't want to play the game with him, and because of that, he's probably put a girl who is very good at the game to not wanting to play anymore, right? That little it's such a little piece, right? But it's everything that you say in terms of the culture, in terms of race, that really kicks down each one of these points. And once you get to the point where you're like, wow, this isn't tie-breaking anymore, right? Like the Oakville, my hometown, Oakville's hockey scene in girls is 3 times the size of the hockey scene for the boys, right? And that's because the girls are better. The girls are better. And once you start developing this culture, not from our age, but from the kids, the 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, once you start developing that culture from that age, you'll get this beautiful population of people that are really accepting of the growth and the future of all of esports.
I'm talking with Caleb Blueby, and we're talking about all things esports. Lastly, Caleb, let me ask you this. what is your hope for esports going forward? What would you like to see happen with this booming industry?
I'd like to see a lot of things. I would like to see brand recognition from outside esports, so outside the tech industry, where it's really not just us thinking about esports, it's the world thinking about esports, and it starts with us really pushing outside the esports and getting ourselves in mainstream culture like Ninja has done. But I'd also love to see a lot better culture inside of esports, players on the casual scene, developing women and men and all races and all cultures that could have the opportunity to play professional esports. They should have the opportunity, you know, and that's going to take a while to develop. I'd also like to see the bad stuff in esports, and I hinted at this a while ago, but FaZe vs Tfue, that should never be a problem. That should never be in the courts, and we're going to see how that shakes out in early 2021, but the fact that it's going to court already says that there's a problem, right? The fact that there's something that hasn't been worked out behind the scenes says that there's a massive problem there, and it needs to be publicly laid out in not only the California court, but also the New York court, because they're taking two different cases, and that's what's really crazy. There's a whole bunch of stuff in business that's not done well. Again, like I said, the esports bubble, the business behind esports is a huge kind of problem as well. And there's a whole bunch behind that's going to shake out in the next few years. And you really start to see the businesses that were representing themselves properly throughout the last 10, 20 years really show up and say, hey, we've been doing this and we've been doing it right. And that's what's going to happen in the next few years. And once you start to see that happen, you'll start to see the rest of it happen too, where outside companies start to come in, where girls start to get the opportunity, where other races start to get the opportunity. South Korea is doing this really well. Their entire population has a huge demographic of not only males and females, but also they have laws. If you cheat in video games, you get put in jail. And that's what's crazy. And once we start to get to the point where South Korea is already at, that's where we're starting to develop the real kind of esports scene as a whole, and really develop the world kind of around esports as well.
Well, I thank you for coming on with me, Caleb, and certainly you've enlightened all of us on a lot of subjects here in pertaining to esports and gaming. So thanks again for coming on. I appreciate it. And hey, have a great day, man. Try to stay out of the thunder and lightning out there. Stay on the safe side. And we'll get you back on again to talk about some more of these important things that we brought up this evening.
For sure. I love talking about esports. I love understanding pieces of the industry. And as always, if you can teach me something, I'd love to sit down and learn about esports as well. There's lots of stuff to talk about, and there's lots of stuff to develop in esports, and it really starts with conversations. So I love doing stuff like this where we can talk about those little pieces as well.
Fantastic. Well, thanks a lot again. And we're going to take it out with Mr. DJ Yams bringing the sounds once again. DJ Yams.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Houston, traffic has never been this hot. Here we go! Sit back and trip. This is the Traffic Jam with Yang.